So, as we said, we're continuing Unit 32. We went into the Harchavot page, right, the extracurriculum part that didn't discuss the Kiddush question, discussed two important questions. One was the question of whether you can also make Kiddush, not only Havdalah, right, the story we started from the top of this page with Rav Morenu and Mar Kshisha told us about how a Meimar made Havdalah on, I guess, beer or something, right? Shechar, ale. I guess that's the correct translation. Ale. Does that mean you can make Kiddush on ale? We saw it's a Machlok Rambam and Rosh. We learned it there. We said L'chatchila, you should at night. It's better to use the challah in the morning that you have that you don't have a separate bracha. You don't say the bracha Mekadesh Shabbat in the morning Kiddush. You could samach on the Rosh and use ale. It's a psak in the Shulchan Aruch. We discussed how much whiskey, if you make Kiddush or Havdalah on whiskey, how much you have to drink. Is that measured by what's appropriate, what the appropriate amount for a normal person to drink is? Or is it the regular Rov Revit? Now, of course, Rafi would say, if you're British, so there's no difference, right? It's no nafkamina. You're going to have Rov Revit anyway. But those who are weaker, those weak amongst us. So we're continuing in the context of Havdalah. We're going to look at as we said, we're going to look at the cup, the incense, the besamim, and the candle. We're going to go into all those things. Unit 32 of Morenu, the menucha of Sir Naim Dangur and Moshe Montefiore, and also Ilui Nishmat Rav Shmuel Cohen. He was one of a father of a friend of mine who passed away this week, who after going on a long shlichut in Australia, came back and just hung out in the Eretz Chamda Beit Midrash. He was 80-something when he passed away this week, but he just came to be around the guys. And one thing that was very noticeable is every time Rav Ehrenreich came, he would rush to make him a cup of coffee and give him a cookie and bring it to the Rav, the Hadrat Kodesh, to mechabed the Rosh Kolal. So, zchutot again aleinu, and we're gonna learn also leilu nishmato. So, we saw that a meimar made havdalah on ale, and the question is, what kind of ale could be used? What kind of beverage could be used? So ale could be used, but what makes ale special? So we saw that one criteria is that's what's normally used, right? A meimar, what happened at the meimar was the first time they brought him ale and he said, okay, I'll just go to sleep without making Havdalah. And he made Havdalah the next morning. Next year, the following year, he came back and they gave him ale again. He said, Tov, I guess this is what they drink around here. So he made Havdalah on that. And we say that's a halachic criteria that it has to be what they normally drink around there. The question is, how far does that extend? In other words, if the normal beverage is coffee, if the standard beverage is Earl Grey tea, if the standard, right? What could be orange juice, right? Tropicana orange juice. If you're in Florida, is that correct? Would you say that orange juice is what people normally drink? What's the criteria? So the halachot ktanot was asked this question. He says the following: so the context of the tshuva is what bracha should you make on coffee? Bichlal, what bracha should you make on coffee? Tshuva. הקפה לא נאכל כשהוא חי, אלא קולין אותו וראוי לאכילה. Right, only after it's roasted, he knew his stuff. כשדחים אותו, מבשלו במים, וראוי היה לברך עליו בורא פרי האדמה. There's a footnote here that discusses, does he really mean האדמה, or does he mean העץ? Right, presumably it should be עץ, not האדמה. Okay? אלא דאם הדבר לברך שהכל. Right, Rafi is, I think he's demonstrating as we speak, right? מה שנשאל אם מקדשים עליו, לא מחוכמה. It was a silly question. די מקדש אלא על חמר מדינה דמרווה ומשחרר דום ידיין. משחרר being the important point here. So it has to be an alcoholic beverage. It's not enough that it's normally drank. It has to be something alcoholic. That's the halachot kanot says. Rav Ovadia follows this ruling. לפי זה ברור, דווקא יין שמשמח בשתייתו. Right? What's misamach about the wine is not the same as misamach about coffee. Right? Misamach about the wine is not that it tastes good, but misamach about the wine is the alcohol. content. כאשר שותה ומיטיב ליבו, בשתייה רבה משתכר. וכן שחר, אל, שהוא חמר מדינה, ששמו מוכיח עליו שנקרא שחר, על שם שמשחרר. וכל כיוצא בזה, ראויים לקדש ולהבדיל עליהם, אבל תה או קפה שם מים עליהם. It's water that has all kinds of other flavors, but it's not, and what I think the point isn't water, I think the point is the non-alcoholic content. העיקר להלכה למעשה, שמי שאפשר לשתות יין, או שאין לו יין ולא שחר, אינו רשאי להבדיל על חלב, או על תה, או על קפה וכיוצא בזה, שכל אלה אינם נחשבים כחמר מדינה. חמר מדינה has to be alcoholic. That's how Ravadi rules. Lemaise, Yalkut Yosef follows this ruling, obviously, son. And that's generally accepted as the Sephardi psak. It has to be arak. It has to be alcoholic. Says our
that would rule out grape juice also.
So that's a good point. Grape juice is called in the Gemara, it's called yain migito, meaning it's wine that hasn't yet gone through the alcoholic process. And that's why it's like an unalcoholic wine. But I think it's a very fair point. I guess the point is the potential that the grapes have of creating wine. Though you can argue that could be true about many drinks, right? You can have a potato drink that if you play it right, it'll turn to vodka, right?
But I think that there's just a clear Gemara that says you're allowed to have grape juice.
Right.
Sochet adam eshkol shel anavim v'omer alav kiddush hayom or something like that. So
right.
So
right.
Regardless of the svarot, like we just have.
No, right. That's also the yain migito is yain shadayin otasas, meaning that's also. I was also quoting the Gemara about that, but the question is, why would that? What justifies this criteria that the halachot cannot says? Mm-hmm. Right. If he's going against the Gemara, what justifies the criteria? So to answer that, I was saying, I guess the potential of becoming alcoholic, but then you might argue, what about a potato juice that could turn into vodka, right? Is how far do you extend that? It's a good question. I guess you can't really drink the potato juice as it is. You can't really drink raw potatoes, right? Until they ferment or cook, but you're not going to cook them because that's right. I'm not sure. It's, what Ravira was saying is a good question. I guess it's because grapes naturally. I'd say like this: grapes naturally are expected to turn into wine. Now, these are grapes that malfunction. They didn't turn into wine. The interesting example we're going to have about this later on is when we get to Tochen. We're going to talk about dash. Sorry. We're going to get to the schita. We're going to say schita deoraita is only grapes, according to many Rishonim, according to some Achronim. Schita deoraita is only grapes and olives. Everything else, even if they're normally squeezed, even if you have the Florida oranges, right? I'm not confusing that. Florida oranges, right? That are strictly used for the Tropicana orange juice. Still, that'll still be an Isur Drabanan, according to most. And the question is why. The Achronim suggest a few reasons, but the main point seems to be that olives are made for their oil, and grapes are created by Kadosh Baruch Hu. This reminds us a bit of Rav Shul Israeli's. I remember Rav Shul Israeli said about the sun. Why are you allowed to cook with the sun? Because the sun wasn't created for cooking, right? It wasn't created in order to cook, right? But we see that the Gan Tirosh Veitzar, the grapes create a new bracha when they create the wine, right? As opposed to the potato juice I mentioned before, or when you create other liquors, right? Other liqueurs, other whiskey, you say shehakol on all those. The fact that the grapes have this unique bor pri hagafen, right? This is the correct use of the grape, right? It's the expected use. I think that's the direction. Otherwise, right, I just want to backtrack. What are we doing here? I'm trying to figure out what justifies the Alchot Ketanot's assertion that Shechar Medina has to be something, making Kiddush and Havdalah has to be done on something that's moveu meshacher, something alcoholic, when the Gemara explicitly says you can make kiddush and Havdalah on grape juice, right? So presumably that connection of the grape juice to the wine that seems to be more inherent, I think that's the justification, which is something we don't find in anything else, right? That's why, for example, I just gave another example that when it comes to dash, grapes have a very unique position because it comes to dash, right? The schita of grapes is perceived differently because that's what you're supposed to do with them. But this goes against long-standing Ashkenazi practice. As the Aruch HaShulchan, we saw this in our Kavod as well, the Aruch HaShulchan says, Reinu l'gdolim, she'asu Havdalah al chalav, או על תמתוק, אף אגב דוודאי לא שייך לקרותן חמר מדינה. פני הלחץ זו הדחק, כגון שאין לו יין ולא שחר. And he goes on, and we saw most of this, and he asks, מה שייך לקרותן חמר מדינה? Sorry. He says his bottom line is, right, דחק גדול כזה, די במה שרק שם משקה על זה. His bottom line seems to be what people normally drink, but that again, that seems to be lacking, right? The definition here doesn't. You expect there to be a clear definition, something more, I don't know, something defined beyond this is what we drink. Rav Moshe, I think, makes a very good point. I think he gives a very sharp definition. He says the following: Chashivut mashke. הוא שאין השתייה מחמת שצריכים להם לצומאם, אלא שותים אותם אף בלא צורך לגופם, אלא בשביל כבוד הסעודה וכבוד האורחים. דין שום אדם שותה יין ויש ושחר לצומאו, דאז השותים מים, שיותר עדיפי, אלא רק לכבוד דל מה שותים אותן, ואלו המינים נקראים בשם משקה וחמר מדינה. So, Rav Moshe's definition, as I understand it, is as follows. The Mishnah says that when you drink water because you're thirsty, you need to make you say shahakol. Why does the Mishnah say that? Because why are you drinking water? Water is tasteless. Why are you drinking it? You only ever drink water for hydration, right? Now, why do you drink whiskey? You don't drink whiskey for hydration. Now, you don't really even drink, you definitely don't drink coffee for hydration. Do you drink tea for hydration? I don't know. Good question. But his point is this: if you're drinking it in order to hydrate, that's a technical need, and that doesn't justify the Shachar Medina definition. Something is defined as Shachar Medina, as Chamar Medina, if you drink it as part of the Seudah, if you drink it as a unique, if you drink it for its flavor, for I'd say for the setting, for the how would I say this? You're drinking it as part of the social act. If you're drinking it something like that, right? You meet someone for a cup of coffee. So why are you drinking coffee? You're not drinking coffee for hydration because coffee does the opposite. You might drink coffee to wake you up, as I see some of you are doing, but when you meet someone for a cup of coffee, you're not drinking coffee in order to wake up, right? You might not even drink coffee. It'll still be called meeting for a cup of coffee, right? Why is it called meeting for a cup of coffee? Because you do, as a social act, right? You have a cup of coffee. It's not for the means of hydration. It's because that's what we drink when we get together with people. Just like, I don't know, they say that French people meet and have wine always, consistently, right? And other people, right, will meet up Shabbos morning and have, not during lockdown, will meet up Shabbos morning and have whiskey, right? Or have something else. So if it would be accepted to meet up and have chocolate milk, that too could be considered Chamar Medina. Something you drink as a social drink and not for the sake of hydration, that's how he defines Chamar Medina. Now, again, there are two stages here. The first step has to be Chamar, I guess I'd say, let's start with the other one. It has to be Medina. Just because I like drinking chocolate milk doesn't make it Chamar Medina. It means that I like drinking chocolate milk. It has to be something, in order to fit the definition of Medina, it has to be something that's socially accepted all around. in order to be defined as chamar, it has to be something that the reason it's drunk socially is not for the hydration quality, but because that's what you drink. And I think the prime example, I think in English at least, would be, but also in Hebrew, be meeting for a cup of coffee, right? You meet for a cup of coffee, even if you're not going to drink coffee, you still meet for a cup of coffee, right? I think that's why you could make Havdalah on coffee. Right, the same goes for beer, the same goes for whiskey, the same, right? But those are easier because those are alcoholic, so that's more self-evident. But so as opposed to the halachot knot and the Rav Ovadia, who say it has to be alcoholic, Rav Moshe, I think, gives this other definition of it has to be something that's something you drink socially, not something you drink for the hydration quality.